religious with the Lord a lot of times, and we think that everything that happens in church. Not our group. Our group is not like that. But sometimes people think that. Like the second they left church, they're like, oh, not spiritual anymore. And then like, ooh, the Spirit. And it's like, really? You think that's how it works? But when we come together, there's a corporate anointing and there's a corporate faith and there's something that God does when you're together with the rest of the group. And it's not just, and online is good, and it's fine that we can get things online, but there's something about physical presence, and I don't know exactly understand all of it, but there's something about the physical presence of us coming together. And what did Jesus say? If there are two or more, right? So there's something about two. There's something about three. There's something about actually all the numbers. There's certain things about when we get these numbers together. It doesn't say 2,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. If you'll look, what did God do with the numbers? Look at what he did with Gideon. He subtracted them. You know why? You know why he subtracted them? Because it was too many people. And when he did what he was going to do through Gideon and his army, he said, if I do it through 30,000 people, they're going to say it's because you had 30,000 soldiers. He goes, I'm going to do it 300. So God's wisdom and our wisdom are not the same. And it's not about 30,000 versus 3,000 or anything. It's about who gets the glory. God doesn't share his glory. And what we want here is we want an activation of the glory of God, not the glory of men. And there's a lot of us that are out there that are preaching, and there's a lot of good churches out there, guys. There's a lot of good churches. There's a lot of good churches in the area, and the pastors and the ministers love the Lord so much, and the people that are around them love the Lord, and there's good work being done all through this county. I want you guys to understand that. This is not us three and no more, and we're the only chosen of God, right? It's about the whole church coming together into what? Into this revelation of the new creation, into this new way of seeing and being, okay? So I might mention some old things, well, this is the way we used to do it, and that's the way we used to do it. But understand this, when I say that, I am not putting down a single church in this area, because listen, we're all walking in the degree of light that we have. And you know what? I bet a year from now, I'll look back and go, I wish I wouldn't have done that. We're all going to do that, okay? So I'm saying the reason that I set off the differences is so that we personally can leave that stuff behind, and then we can move on. But if other people are, there's people that love the Lord so much that don't believe in the gifts of the Spirit, but guess what? They know Jesus, and when you go to heaven, you'll be like, how you doing? And you can be like, what about them tongues, So, that's just the way it's going to be. Right? So we're not trying to prove our doctrine over another person's doctrine. We're not trying to have doctrine wars or shepherd wars like we pretend, that's my sheep, give my sheep back, I want a sheep. Now we have these giant shepherd wars going on. We're not doing any of that because we are what? The ecclesia. We're the called out ones. We're the ones that sit in the courts of heaven, and we make judgments on the earth. Why? According to what we see in heaven. This is who we are. We're all this. It's not just us. Okay? But what we're doing is we're pursuing what God is pursuing us for with this group. And that means that some things that we're doing, I'm not doing certain things anymore because God showed me you don't have to do that. I was like, oh, okay. And it's less work. It's less work. Think of it that way. So anyway, so know that our heart is for every church in this area. Our heart is for, we have churches that we came out of, Living Word Family Church. You guys have churches you've come out of. We even have New Life in Lehigh. They have great pastors. There's great people and great leaders. Every church has got this, that, and the other thing, but we support the Church of Jesus Christ 100%. And there's not a single church that I would be like, Now listen, you may have a bad experience. Maybe that's not a place you need to go to. That's okay. But God has a plan and a purpose for all of us. Okay? So just remember that when we're talking about this. Okay, so 2 Peter. I'm still in 2 Peter 1. I made it to verse 5. Woohoo! Okay. Well, we won't go too long today, much longer. But all right, so verse 5 says this, and while you apply all diligence in the matter, add to your faith moral excellence, and to moral excellence knowledge. So we talked about this last week. So we are looking at 2 Peter in the light, and this isn't the theme of 2 Peter, but there's some tidbits in it, in the light of being one with Christ. Okay? Of being, like in other words, here's you, And is Christ over here? No, he's in you, right? So how we have this union with him. And so when he was talking earlier, he talked about in verse 4 about how we're partakers of the nature of Elohim. Partakers of the nature of Elohim. In other words, God is like a certain way, okay? He has a certain, so like if you know somebody really well and you see them, right? And you see a person. Have you ever watched a movie and they start talking and you're like, that person reminds me of so-and-so? Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because there's something about their nature, maybe the way they talk, maybe an expression, maybe something that's just like that other person. You know, you ever watch a movie, there's the actor and he's like, you know, that totally reminds me of Bob. No, you know, it reminds me of that guy. You know, so you look and it's something about him. There's something in their nature that you can see in another person. Well, God has a nature, and God's desire is for us to be partakers of his nature. In other words, when they look at us, they'll be like, you know, that reminds me of somebody. Oh, it's God. That person's a lot like God. So we are partakers of this nature, the nature of Elohim, right? While we flee the what? The corruption that's in the world. So guess what? Not everything in the world is looking like Elohim. Some stuff is looking like the opposite of Elohim. You know, that hurricane that came through? That isn't Elohim. That is bad stuff. God doesn't go around saying, I'm going to destroy that city. Woohoo! You know, that's not the nature of God. God's desire is for what? For good. He desires for good. I'm thinking about you right now. What are you thinking about? Good. Remember how we said last week, I watched it a little bit. Last week we were like, hey, let me introduce you to Jesus. He's very disappointed in you. It's like, what? Maybe I don't want to meet Jesus. If he's disappointed in me, maybe we'll work on whatever he's disappointed on before I meet with him. And that's how a lot of people feel about the Lord. They feel like the Lord's disappointed in them. There's a bunch of stuff they're going to have to do. And so they don't, like, listen, I ain't setting foot in that church because I know. You don't even have to tell me he's disappointed in me. I know he's disappointed in me, and I don't really want to have to deal with that right now. So hopefully I can get my stuff together, and when I get it together, I'll come to church. Has anybody ever had that conversation with people? That's exactly how people feel because they don't understand the nature of Elohim. Because you know why? Because we are the partakers of the nature of Elohim, and we are the ones that are demonstrating Elohim to the world. So if people don't know Elohim, and they're looking at Elohim and thinking that he is disappointed in them, and that if they come to church, there's a lot of stuff they're going to have to clean up first. Well, guess what? They're not going to come because we're the ones that are supposed to be portraying this nature of love and acceptance and forgiveness for people, not sloppy grace. Okay, you know, what is sloppy grace? Sloppy grace is, oh, God doesn't care what you do. Live like the devil. No. He wants to put his nature in you too. But he's not disappointed in you because that's why Jesus came. Because he loves you. He's never, ever been disappointed in you. Ever. That's good to know. So anyway, so we looked at the partakers of the nature of Elohim. We looked at that he gave us great and precious promises. Great and precious promises. So that's something you want to find out about. Heaven. Right? So we flee. Flee the corruption that's in the world. You know? If you're fleeing Hurricane Michael, how do you flee? Everybody get in the car and let's get out of here, right? So if you're fleeing corruption, you're not going to be like hanging around corruption like, I'm supposed to flee this, but that's interesting. You know? That's not a flee. That's a messing around with it, right? That means, you know, I always think of Joseph, right? When he was being, you know, accused by Potiphar's wife, you know, and he's like, get me out of here. That should be us. Amen. You know, you're online clicking things. Run away. Set the computer on fire. It's like, Okay, that was a little much. So flee the corruption because what's the corruption doing? It's corrupting your nature through your mind. The nature that God makes us partakers of is his nature, not the nature of the world. The world has been corrupted. And I mean the lower realm, not the creation. The creation's the Lord, is the Lord's. And we're actually bringing that back into under Christ, okay? So this is what we looked at. Partakers of the divine nature, for in him we live and move and have our being. If you live and move and have your being in Christ, that's how you're partaking of his nature because his nature and your nature are together. You're together. You are one spirit with the Lord. There's no separation. How come you have the same nature? Because you have the same person in you. And then we all start looking the same. You all look the same. Well, that's the nature of Christ. It's the nature of God in us. Okay. So apply all diligence to the matter. Okay? Apply all diligence to the matter. So now that we found out that we partake of the divine nature, that we flee the corruption that's in the world, flee. I'm fleeing. You know, we're fleeing and here's the corruption. You know, you can just see that in my mind, right? We're fleeing it. Now we're applying diligence to the matter. What's the matter? The fact that we are partakers of the divine nature. So we didn't have to do anything to get the divine nature. Jesus did it. We didn't save ourselves. Jesus saved us. We just saw, and in seeing, we believed what? The love of God. And in that point in time, we became born from above. And once we were born from above, the nature became our nature. Okay? So we didn't have to do anything to get that nature. That nature already came into us in Christ. So now what he's saying is, since you know this now, apply diligence to that fact. Stay consistent. So we apply healing because by his stripes we are healed. We apply provision because Jesus became poverty. He became poor so that we might become rich. So we apply prosperity. So when I see my life, I see it prosperous. Why is that? Because Jesus became poor so I might become rich. Rich, rich, rich. That's what it says in the Bible, that you will become rich. And guess what? The rich is here and the rich is there. It doesn't matter. It's a means to an end, right? What's that? To establish the kingdom of heaven on the earth. If you look in the Old Testament, he even told Moses that. He told him that they will be blessed and prosperous to establish his covenant on the earth. So prosperity doesn't have anything to do about your kingdom. It has to do about his kingdom. And to establish his kingdom on the earth, which is a kingdom of righteousness and truth and peace. Right? Okay? So do what you can with that. Apply your visions. Apply your dreams. We talked about that. Apply miracles. You have miracles in you. Apply them. Miracles get worked. You can apply them. I'm going to apply this miracle. I'm going to apply this healing. Remember? Activate, activate, activate. Okay? So apply all these things. Apply peace to your life. Okay, so add to your faith moral excellence. Okay? Add to your faith moral excellence. You say, well, it's faith plus nothing. No, it's faith, add to that moral excellence. So we add our faith to things. So what is basically, remember how we always use the same analogy? God gives you faith to open your presents, which is basically showing you that you have presents. So now you open the presents. Did you have to work for the presents? No, because they were given to you. They were gifts. God gives gifts. He's the big, great gift giver of all creation. I mean, he gives gifts to the birds. He gives gifts to the ants. The ants go around and they find food. Why? Because God is generous. And he doesn't be like, well, look, the humans, they're the top of the ladder here, you know. And so they are the only ones that get the gifts. No, he is generous to all of creation. Jesus said, take a look at the lilies in the field. Take a look at all the grass. I mean, God covers them. He takes care of grass. God cares about the grass. He cares about the grass in your yard. He does. He cares about it. He cares about the little birds that fly around. He takes care of even the littlest ones. Nobody knows about the littlest ones. And then as you study science, you'll see they get really little, microscopic. He takes care of them too. He takes care of the microscopic creatures that they didn't even know about. Okay, so moral excellence is the nature of God. Moral excellence. It's doing the right thing. It's doing what's right, not doing what's wrong. So when we partake of the divine nature, we give ourselves completely over to him. So in other words, any imagination that we have in our mind about who we are, we cast that down and raise up the image of who God is within us, because that is our true nature. Don't we have a lot of this going on right now? Confusion regarding your nature. Purposeful confusion. Premeditated planting of thoughts and imaginations in the mind of men so that they will be confused as to their true nature. Why is that? Why did that just happen all of a sudden? Because listen, the behavior that that type of thing suggests has been around since the beginning of time. But right now, something has decided that we are going to program the minds of men so that they are confused as to their actual physical nature. And it's a reflection of the spiritual realm. And why is that? Because right now as I speak, God is opening up to all. We say, well, people in church. No, it's everybody. It's those people out there. It's the people over there. It's the people down the street. Everywhere. God is gracious to all of us. Even if we're together in the ecclesia or not, God is gracious to all of us, and he is revealing something to us. He is revealing our true nature. Our true nature has nothing to do with what they're talking about. Our true nature has to do with God. It has to do with the fact that we are partakers of his divine nature through Christ. And that expands out more than just being morally excellent. That moral excellence builds upon itself into faith and into other realms and other dimensions. And so we're just starting. We're just getting started, guys. Actually, we're just scraping the very top surface layer of infinity.